Right Side Nation, Mike Hanley here with RightSideNews.com. Don't be left, be right. So I just kind of wanted to get back in business a little bit here today. It is August the 7th. We've had, of course, a lot of things going down. We've had some great news about the economy. Economy is growing at 4.1%, which was a number that was unheard of during the 2016 election. And I'm just so glad to see the manufacturing that's coming back. Um, about 500,000 new jobs in the manufacturing sector since Donald Trump's been elected. And as we know, unemployment is extremely low for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, and women. And it's just very positive. But this video today is going to be focused on Mr. Fake News, Jim Acosta. So Jim Acosta, boom, equals fake news. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why I think Jim Acosta is the epitome of fake news. But before I do that, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, show some of the positive things that I've seen out of him, and then I'm going to go back and talk about why I think he is Mr. Fake News. Jim Acosta, Mr. Fake News. Hold on one second. I'm going to go ahead and flip over.
Everybody do your best to communicate with people and let them know that we're just here to do the news. That's our job as part of democracy. Listen, I felt more comfortable at rallies than I feel right now, but these are my fellow Americans. I'm not going to back down. I'm not going to walk away from them. I'll talk to them as long as they want to talk to me. I still go do my job. I have to do my live shot.
And so do I.
Yeah,
I'll let you get back to it. Thank you, Jim.
I didn't mean that he was bad mouthing. I mean that he's making people watch the news, which has been great for them.
Thank you very much.
You know what that is?
Yes, sir. Of course I do. Yes.
Not everybody does.
No, proud of you and proud of your family. Thank you for your
Talk
sacrifice.
sometime if you want.
Absolutely. Know what it's about. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So I'm not saying that he's not hard on you. I'm just saying he's making money for liberal and conservative. People are watching.
I would give up all the money that Donald Trump is begging for the press right now if he were to stop calling us the enemy of the people. I think that is potentially endangering the lives of journalists, and I think he probably should stop doing it. I think a lot of that hostility you can feel in this crowd here tonight, and to me, that's not the way you treat your fellow Americans. I'm an American. I'm an American. I grew up in this country. At the last rally, somebody said to me, "I'm surprised that you know the Pledge of Allegiance and the national anthem." Well, of course I do. I grew up in this country, and I went to elementary school in this country. How could I not know the Pledge of Allegiance? But people have been, to some extent, given a bill of goods about who we are and what we do. And so, I feel like if I could go out and demystify some of that and talk to people about it, let's try to do a good thing.
So we just saw Jim Acosta taking some interviews, talking a little bit about who he is, why he does what he does. He specifically mentioned Donald Trump being mentioning that the media in this country was the enemy of the people. And, you know, Trump, the way he says things, they don't always come across in the best of light. However, I think Trump raises a good point here because he's saying that really what he's saying is that the fake news media is the enemy of the people in this country, which I completely agree with. Because what the media does, whether it's the left or the right, is they pick a particular story, they follow that story, and then they put a spin on it to make it seem like what someone is doing is either good or bad for their particular cause. So it's not just saying, okay, Donald Trump did this. It's Donald Trump did this, and this is why it's good, or this is why it's bad. And we all understand that inherently. Many of these journalists and many of these people that report on the news, such myself, have opinions about what is happening, what is going on. However, I think it is the way that the information is given to the people, the way that is delivered to the people I think, one of the telling ways on why I think Jim Acosta is Mr. Fake News. And I have some examples that are shown here. And like I said, Jim Acosta seems like a pretty sharp guy. He seems like he's fairly well put together. He seems very smart. He knows what he's doing. And that's why when he goes ahead and he puts these questions out there in the media, they're very leading questions, and also I would say that they're very divisive. They're very divisive questions. And who does he work for? He works for none other than CNN, which is the probably, I mean, it is the mainstream media darling of the left. Now, it may not be as far left as maybe MSNBC or other entities, other news entities, but he is, I would say, probably the most well-known reporter for CNN. I mean, you have Wolf Blitzer, you have Don Lemon, and then you have the guy with the white hair and the glasses. I can't remember his name right now. But the point being is he is in a position where he can influence many people. And it's not just the news that they report, it's how they report the news. So they can take any given story about Donald Trump. They can take any given story about what's happening in America, and they can either use that to unite and to explain how it's good for the people, or they can use that in a divisive way, which brings people apart, which we obviously want. We want unification. We want people in our country to unite so we can find a common ground on some of the issues that are going on. So I've already been on for about 7.5 minutes. As you saw in that previous bit, we had Jim Acosta getting a chance of liar, liar. We had a shout out for InfoWars, but you do have Jim Acosta saying, I'm American. I grew up in the American public schools. Of course, I know the Pledge of Allegiance and the national anthem. Well, in many schools now, they don't have the kids say the Pledge of Allegiance because they're against it. So that's neither here nor there. But, I commend Jim Acosta for taking questions at the rally, for talking to people who disagree with him. And, hey, props to Jim Acosta for that. So let me go ahead and flip this back to the screen, and I'm going to show you guys a question that he gives to Mick Mulcahy during a White House press briefing. And this I thought was pretty telling. So we'll go ahead and throw this on. I think you'll understand kind of why I'm saying Jim Acosta is Mr. Fake News.
Beginning of this, you said this was the Schumer shutdown. How can it be the Schumer shutdown when Republicans control the White House, the House, and the Senate?
Come on, you know the answer to that as well as anybody. I mean, I have to laugh when people say that, oh, we control the House and the Senate and the White House, why can't you get this done? You know as well as anybody that it takes 60 votes in the Senate to pass an appropriations bill, right? You know that.
I know that.
Okay, so when you only have 51 votes in the Senate, then you have to have Democrat support in order to keep the government, to fund the government. So that's the answer to your question.
The President asked Congress to come up with a solution for the Dreamers. Congress was in the room. Members of Congress were in the room with the President last week. It seemed to be a fairly productive meeting. And then the whole process got blown up.
When Republicans tried to...
If I may, it seems that the whole process was blown up by the President's comments. When Republicans tried to add a discussion about Obamacare to the funding process in 2013, we are accused by Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer of inserting a non-fiscal, a non-financial issue into the spending process in order to shut the government down. How is that not exactly what is happening today? There is no reason that you have to deal with DACA this week. There's no reason you have to deal with DACA before the end of February, the middle of February. DACA doesn't expire till March 5th. This is purely an attempt by the Senate Democrats, led by Mr. Schumer, it's why we call it the Schumer shutdown, in order to try and get a shutdown that they think this president gets blamed for. Yes, ma'am.
So I think there you have it. I think you see Mitch Mulvaney answer the question of Jim Acosta to the point. But I think also it's the question and how he goes about asking the question about the government shutdown. When knowing he has this information, he knows what's going on in terms of Jim Acosta, he understands it, and then he goes ahead and asks a leading question about why the Republicans are doing whatever they're doing, or Trump is saying what he's saying, when it's in fact the Democrats in this case that are leading the shutdown, and that's Chuck Schumer. Here's another one. It's with Jim Acosta and Sarah Sanders.
I just wanted to follow up on Sarah's question from NPR. She asked you about Ivanka Trump's statement that the press is not the enemy of the people. And she asked you whether or not the press is the enemy of the people. You read off a laundry list of your concerns about the press and things that you feel like are misreported, but you did not say that the press is not the enemy of the people. And I think it would be a good thing if you were to say right here at this briefing that the press, the people who are gathered in this room right now, doing their jobs every day, asking questions of officials like the ones you brought forward earlier, are not the enemy of the people. I think we deserve that.
I think the president has made his position known. I also think it's ironic.
Would you mind telling us,
I'm trying to
Sarah,
answer your question.
Okay, well,
I politely waited, and I even called on you despite the fact that you interrupted me while calling on your colleague.
Well,
I said it's ironic.
Which is why I interrupted.
I'm trying.
But if you finish, if you would not mind letting me have a follow-up, that would be fine. But
It's ironic, Jim, that not only you and the media attack the president for his rhetoric when they frequently lower the level of conversation in this country. Repeatedly, the media resorts to personal attacks without any content other than to incite anger. The media has attacked me personally on a number of occasions, including your own network, said I should be harassed as a life sentence, that I should be choked. ICE officials are not welcomed in their place of worship, and personal information is shared on the internet. When I was hosted by the Correspondents Association, of which almost all of you are members of, you brought a comedian up to attack my appearance and call me a traitor to my own gender. In fact, as I know, as far as I know, I'm the first press secretary in the history of the United States that's required Secret Service protection. The media continues to ratchet up the verbal assault against the president and everyone in this administration, and certainly we have a role to play, but the media has a role to play for the discourse in this country as well.
And sir, if you don't mind, if I may follow up, excuse me, you did not say in the course of those remarks that you just made that the press is not the enemy of the people. Are we to take it from what you just said? We all get put through the ringer. We all get put in the meat grinder in this town, and you're no exception. And I'm sorry that that happened to you. I wish that had not happened. But for the sake of this room, the people who are in this room, this democracy, this country, all the people around the world are watching what you're saying, Sarah, and the White House for the United States of America, the President of the United States should not refer to us as the enemy of the people. His own daughter acknowledges that, and all I'm asking you to do, Sarah, is to acknowledge that right now and right here.
I appreciate your passion. I share it. I've addressed this question. I've addressed my personal feelings. I'm here to speak on behalf of the president. He's made his comments clear.
So right there, you see Jim Acosta in the very beginning. Watch when he asks his questions. He's always looking down. He's looking down at a notebook because it's all predetermined. So the CNN headline says Ivanka Trump doesn't like that Trump says that the media is the enemy of the people. And she acknowledges, Ivanka Trump acknowledges, quote unquote, that the media is not the enemy of the people. Well, Jim Acosta then goes ahead, reads from a script, asking Sarah Sanders if Donald Trump says, or if Sarah Sanders will say that the media is not the enemy of the people. And here's what I think it gets all twisted, because this is all predetermined. This is all scripted. So Jim Acosta knows exactly what he's going to ask when he goes in there. So when he goes in there, he is going to get a certain type of he's going to give a certain type of question to Sarah Sanders or the White House press secretary, whoever that may be, or somebody at a rally, or Donald Trump, or another leader of another country, and he's going to ask a leading question in hopes that he will get a returned answer. and he either wants to achieve he's trying to get the answer that he wants to achieve, either that or he's trying to get some type of answer that CNN can use to use as a headline. So it's not so much that they're trying to report the news in these specific situations. It's more that they're trying to stir up division and the typical left versus right politics. And I think that's why Jim Acosta is fake news, because he's not so much worried about the news. He is more worried about, oh, that the press isn't the enemy of the people, and I want to hear right now that we're not the enemy of the people. So if Sarah Sanders stands up and she says that the media is the enemy of the people, boom, CNN uses that headline. The press secretary says that the press is the enemy of the people. So I just think it's very important. It's not so much exactly what is said, it's how it's said, and the ways in which these questions are asked, and the type of answers that they're trying to get out of the people. And this happens in politics all the time. You remember when Donald Trump was up there, the very first debate, Megyn Kelly, she talked about Donald Trump. You called women pigs, whatever. That was the very first thing, because Megyn Kelly didn't like Donald Trump and she didn't want him to be president. So they will say things and do things in order to create a certain narrative that they're trying to achieve, which advances a particular goal. And that's typically what we've seen in the media is the goal of the left, the liberal left media in the country. And that's why I think Jim Acosta is Mr. Fake News. We're going to go ahead and give another video here of Jim Acosta, and this was during the meeting with Kim Jong-un, Chairman Kim Jong-un, and Donald Trump in Singapore, which was the Korean summit. And this is Jim Acosta. This is the first thing he asked. Listen to this.
And listen again and see if second time around we can make out more of it.
Mr. President, how's the meeting going so far, sir? Any progress, Mr. President?
Chairman Kim, will you denuclearize?
Mr. President, how's it going so far, sir?
Very good.
What do you think?
Very, very good. Chairman Kim, will you denuclearize?
Mr. Kim, will you give up your nuclear weapons, sir?
So this is a historic summit in Singapore where Donald Trump is meeting with Kim Jong-un, Chairman Kim Jong-un of North Korea. And there's Jim Acosta saying, how's the summit going? He asked Trump 2 or 3 times, how's the summit? Trump responds, very good. And then he says, Kim, will you denuclearize? Will you give up your nuclear weapons? And I mean, this is unbelievable, because does this guy want peace in the world? Because people are picking and prodding at Donald Trump constantly. And it's almost like Jim Acosta goes to Singapore to try to sabotage this summit. And you can hear clearly what he's asking. Are you going to give up your nuclear weapons? Well, those are the cards that Kim Jong-un holds. He holds the cards that he has nuclear weapons. And of course, he doesn't want to give them up. But also, he's meeting with Trump for the first time. Trump is trying to build rapport. He's trying to build goodwill with the leader of another country to strike a deal. We know Trump, the art of the deal. And so Trump needs this room on the world stage to get these deals done. And you have the head journalist at CNN going around and trying to bust up these talks asking about nuclear weapons. I mean, it's just, in my personal opinion, it is his job, but the question is extremely inappropriate for the setting. It's extremely inappropriate. And I think anybody who is sharp like Jim Acosta is, as we've seen with his way of words and how he handles himself, he knows better than anybody else that that is really not a legit question at that moment in time. Maybe ask something about, have you had talks about denuclearization, so on and so forth, but not, Mr. Kim, are you willing to give up your nuclear weapons? Like that, I mean, to me, it's just not legit. So I kind of wanted to show that, throw that in there real quick to give you another idea of the type of questions that Jim Acosta asks. And it's not, like I said, it's not necessarily just the questions that he asks, but how he goes about asking them. Here's another good one.
Jim?
What about the president's tweet over the weekend? People's lives are being shattered and destroyed by mere allegation. It seems like the president was believing Mr. Porter as opposed to his alleged victims. Why did the president tweet that over the weekend? Why is he seemingly defending Mr. Porter publicly? Is it because he has faced his own allegations? Is there some sensitivity there? Is that why that is?
Look, as I just said, and I'll repeat it again, the president and the entire administration take domestic violence very seriously and believe all allegations need to be investigated thoroughly. He certainly supports the victims of domestic violence above all else and believes that everyone should be treated fairly and with due process. The president is simply saying that there should be a due process that should be followed and looked at.
Is there two difference there? Is there just being on the wrong side of things?
I don't think the president being on supporting due process for any allegation is not tone deaf. I think it is allowing things to be investigated and a mere allegation not be the determining factor. He's not taking a side necessarily one way or the other on any specific issue here. He's talking about mere allegations shouldn't be the determining factor for any individual, that there should be due process. I think anybody here, if they were accused of something, hold on, Jim, let me finish. Hold on, Jim, hold on. What I'm saying is I think anybody here, if they were accused of something, would want the opportunity to go through due process. That's all we're saying.
So there you have it. Jim Acosta again, interrupting Sarah Sanders, asking questions about why Trump is taking a certain stance in terms of a sexual harassment and a sexual harassment case, which I believe involved a member of Congress. And when Trump is, tweeting out, doing his thing, communicating directly with the American people, then CNN always comes back and asks, "Oh, is he tone deaf? Should he not have said this? Well, what exactly did he mean?" And I think Trump, more than anybody else, he says what he means and he means what he says. So it's pretty clear overall in terms of what Trump means. And CNN is always there, especially Jim Acosta, to come back, stir up the pot, try to use these stories to sow discord and division in our country. And I just think it's complete nonsense. And it's doing nothing more than just trying to create political points for the left. And that's what Jim Acosta tries to do. And I think for the most part, he's been very unsuccessful doing that. And I think that's because Trump is so strong and so fierce with his words and how he communicates. And he communicates directly via Twitter with the American people. Hey, and it may not always be pretty. It may not always be what people like. Maybe they don't want to see it. Maybe they think he should try to communicate on a higher plane in terms of taking the high road. But I also think there is such negative coverage of Donald Trump that even if he goes negative, it doesn't matter. It hurts other candidates, but there's such negative. I think something like 80 to 90% of the coverage on Donald Trump is negative. So not only is there coverage on him nonstop, but 90% of that coverage is negative. And I think these type of questions from Jim Acosta from the left-wing media and their narrative and these stories that they want to push, which really hold no weight as people catch on more and more. You see the walk away movement. People are walking away because they're just so sick and tired of it. People don't necessarily love Donald Trump, but they respect the job that he's doing, and they respect that he's turning the economy around. And he is not doing anything outside of the realm that other presidents have done before. He's just doing it in a manner where he is not controlled by the deep state, by the media, by Congress, by lobbyists, by special interests. He's not controlled by those guys. And that's the beautiful thing about what Trump's doing. Here's a really good one. This is with Stephen Miller and Jim Acosta. And this is where Jim Acosta, sometimes it's like, hey, buddy, maybe you just need to go ahead and just zip it just a little bit, all right? Here it is.
What you're proposing, or what the president's proposing here, does not sound like it's in keeping with American tradition when it comes to immigration. The Statue of Liberty says, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, you're English free. It doesn't say anything about speaking English or being able to be a computer programmer. Aren't you trying to change what it means to be an immigrant coming into this country if you're telling them you have to speak English? Can't people learn how to speak English when they get here?
Well, first of all, right now, it's a requirement to be naturalized, you have to speak English. So the notion that speaking English wouldn't be a part of immigration systems would be actually very ahistorical. Secondly, I don't want to get off into a whole thing about history here, but the Statue of Liberty is the symbol of liberty enlightening the world. It's the symbol of American liberty enlightening the world. The poem that you're referring to was added later. It's not actually part of the original Statue of Liberty, but more fundamentally, the history, but more fundamentally,
you're saying that that does not represent.
I'm saying that the notion.
I'm sorry. No, that sounds. Let me ask you a question. That sounds like some national park revisionism.
No, what I'm asking you
is, the Statue of Liberty has always
let me ask you a question.
Of hope to the world for people to send
do you believe
to this country, and they're not always going to speak English. They're not always going to be highly skilled. They're not always going to be.
Jim, I appreciate your speech. Jim, I appreciate your speech. So let's talk about this. Jim, let's talk about this. In 1970, when we let in 300,000 people a year, was that violating or not violating the Statue of Liberty law of the land? In the 1990s, when it was 500,000 a year, was it violating or not violating the Statue of Liberty law of the land? When it was 700,000 a year, so tell me what years meet Jim Acosta's definition of the Statue of Liberty poem law of the land. So you're saying 1 million a year is the Statue of Liberty number. 900,000 violates it, 800,000 violates it.
You're sort of bringing a press one for English philosophy here to immigration, and that's never what the United States has been about.
But your statement's also shockingly ahistorical in another respect too, which is if you look at the history of immigration, it's actually ebbed and flowed. You've had periods of very large waves, followed by periods of less immigration and more immigration, and during
we've had a period of immigration right now. Wants to build it's actually about a sweeping change.
Surely, Jim, you don't actually think that a wall affects green card policy. You couldn't possibly believe that, do you? Actually, the notion that you actually think immigration is at a historic wall, the foreign-born population of the United States today, Jim.
Talking about how border crossings.
Do you really? I want to be serious, Jim. Do you really see and not know the difference between green card policy and illegal immigration?
Sir,
you really don't know that?
He came to this country in 1962, right before the Cuban Missile Crisis, and obtained a green card. Yes, people who immigrate to this country eventually. People who immigrate to this country not through
Jim, as a factual question.
Do obtain a green card at some point. They do it through a lot of hard work, and yes, they may learn English as a second language later on in life. But this whole notion of, well, they could learn, they have to learn English before they get to the United States. Are we just going to bring in people from Great Britain and Australia?
It's actually, I have to honestly say, I am shocked at your statement that you think that only people from Great Britain and Australia would know English. It's actually, it reveals your cosmopolitan bias to a shocking degree that in your mind, no, this is an amazing moment. This is an amazing moment. That you think only people from Great Britain or Australia would speak English is so insulting to millions of hardworking immigrants who do speak English from all over the world. Jim, have you honestly never met an immigrant from another country who speaks English outside of Great Britain and Australia? Is that your personal experience? But that's not what you said, and it shows your cosmopolitan bias. And I just want to say,
you're trying to engineer the racial and ethnic flow of people into this country.
that is one of the most outrageous, insulting, ignorant, and foolish things you've ever said. And for you, that's still a really the notion that you think that this is a racist bill is so wrong and so insulting. Jim, the reality is that the foreign-born population into our country has quadrupled since 1970. That's a fact. It's been mostly driven by green card policy. Now, this bill allows for immediate nuclear family members to come into the country, much as they would today, and then it adds an additional points-based system. The people who've been hurt the most, the people who've been hurt the most by the policy you're advocating are apparently just unfettered, uncontrolled migration. The people who've been hurt the most by the policy, the people who've been hurt the most by the policy that you're advocating are immigrant workers and minority workers and African American workers and Hispanic workers.
And it has no American community. That you brought it up again. You said you wanted to have a conversation and not target. It's going to be targeted.
This is what we want to do.
The African American community, are you going to target? I'm not trying to be funny.
Right, I know what you're saying. What you're saying is 100% correct. We want to help unemployed African Americans in this country and unemployed workers of all backgrounds get jobs. And insinuations like Jim made, trying to ascribe nefarious motives to a compassionate immigration measure designed to help newcomers and current arrivals alike, is wrong. And this is a positive, optimistic proposal that says 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now, we want to have an immigration system that takes care of the people who are coming here and the people who are already living here by having standards, by having a real clear requirement.
So I think what you see there is Jim Acosta essentially digging his own grave. Jim Acosta is sitting here, and it's like I said, it's not about reporting. It's about creating this narrative that Trump's immigration bill is racist, that it's inherently racist because it only wants to allow people that speak English come into this country. And Acosta specifically says, and this is what Stephen Miller calls out, that people from England and Australia are predominantly the people that speak English in this country, which is complete nonsense. It's this idea that only people from those two countries are going to speak English. I mean, is this guy for real? We have people all over the world that can speak English. So the idea is that the people that can speak English that are going to come here are going to more easily assimilate, get jobs, be able to function in this society is if they can speak and understand the language that is being used here. And that's not to say that people who can't speak English aren't going to be allowed, but I think it gives priority to those who can because they are able to more easily assimilate to our country, to our values, and to the life, the liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. One last one here on good old Jimmy Boy Acosta gets shut down by none other than Donald J. Trump. And we'll go ahead and show you this right now.
Mr. President, did you say that you want more people to come in from Norway? Did you say that you wanted more people to come in from Norway? Is that true, Mr. President?
Thank you very much. I want them to come in from everywhere. Thank you very much, everybody.
Just Caucasian or white countries, sir, or do you want people to come in from other parts of the world where there are people of color?
Jim, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Mr. President,
Jen,
is there
thank
any
you.
cause off money
Jen,
in Trump's
we're in today.
So Trump specifically says he wants people to come in from everywhere. But then Acosta then in the Oval Office has the audacity to then ask, do you only want people to come in from predominantly Caucasian countries? And so he's basically saying that Trump, when people immigrate here, not only is the immigration bill racist, but he's only going to allow people who speak English from predominantly Caucasian countries. So this is why, and that is the icing on the cake for this video. This is predominantly why Jim Acosta is Mr. Fake News, because his goal, in my personal opinion, is to do nothing but sow discourse within the United States in terms of left versus right, white versus black, in this class warfare that the media has been perpetuating for far too long. So anyways, I just wanted to put this together. I hope you guys liked the video. Please comment. Please let me know if there's anything that I can do better. It's been a pleasure to be back with you. Again, my name is Mike Hanley with RightSideNews.com. Don't be left, be right.